All right, what's up, everyone? I am going live here with Victoria. Let me invite her. This is going to be fun. We are going to be talking about body weight strength exercises today with Victoria. There she is.
Hi, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. Well, thanks for doing an IG live with me. I love
Of
picking your
course.
brain about things.
I love IG Lives. I feel like every time I do it, I always screw something up, but it's nice to be invited to one.
No guarantees that I don't screw something up here either, but until I do, I was hoping to talk more about a theme that's similar or familiar to us, body weight strength exercises for runners. What I wanted to actually drill down into today was how to get more from body weight strength exercises. Because for a lot of runners, they don't want to go to the gym or they don't have access to that kind of equipment. So they are sort of relegated to only doing body weight exercises. You can get a lot out of body weight exercises, and you are a physical therapist, or a certified running coach, or certified strength and conditioning specialist. You are the person to chat with about this stuff. So, if someone is maybe stuck doing body weight exercises, they can't get to that next level of doing some weighted movements. What are some ideas on getting more out of these workouts besides just potentially doing more and more repetitions? That's
Yeah.
obviously an option, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is an option. I think that when it comes to body weight exercises, though, variety is key, and also getting creative is key. So those are like the two main factors. So the variety portion of it is, just because you might be limited being at home or not having access to a ton of equipment doesn't mean you can't get the same benefits of potentially like the benefits you might get from using actual weights, but you can utilize different surfaces. You can utilize different ways to actively move throughout a different exercise to make it harder. You can also utilize timing. Maybe if you're slowing down an exercise, there's a lot of different factors and a lot of different variables. It's just making sure that you are actively using them instead of just sticking to the same exercise every single time and expecting it to be changed.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's almost like there's a certain amount of skill involved with all these different exercises. And if you're only doing 5 exercises over the course of a week, you're missing out on a lot of skill development that could potentially be going on.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about 2 things that you said. You said time and surface.
Yeah.
Let's start with time.
Yeah.
Do you simply mean slowing down an exercise so that you're spending more time, in the eccentric and concentric phase of the exercise? Is that what you mean?
Correct. That is what I mean. And I also mean, making something a little bit faster and performing it maybe as more of an agility type of exercise. So it really can go both ways. I think what a lot of runners do lack generally is like the slowing down portion of it. Most of us kind of know how to do an exercise fast. I think that for a lot of us, it gets us that like cardio rush that we're kind of looking for. Slowing it down can be helpful for many different reasons. Number one, slowing down an exercise often helps you go through more range of motion, which can be more helpful towards strength training. So I'll give you an example that's so simple, like a calf raise. I see a lot of runners do that very quickly, and then they're only hitting like mid-range of the motion, and you're actually not getting the full benefit of the exercise. When you slow it down and you actively take your body through that full range of motion, you're not only putting your body now in the same position that it's going to be in when you're running, like you actively go through that amount of plantar flexion, which is the motion of lifting up your heel. But you're also now working the muscle through the entire range of motion, which helps strengthen it a little bit more. It also can make it harder for that reason. You need to stabilize that joint for a lot longer when you slow down the exercise. And you'll hear a lot of people, say slow it down during the eccentric phase of the motion, which is really for that exercise specifically when you're slowly coming down. I would say for both, can be beneficial, going up slowly, making sure you hit the top of that motion and then nicely and slowly controlling it on the way down. And really that word control is what we're looking for, that can help you actively see more benefits just from doing that exercise a little bit differently and slowing it down versus kind of speeding through it a little bit faster.
Yeah, when you're speeding through exercises, you can use some momentum to your advantage and almost
Exactly.
like cheat a little bit.
Right.
So slowing it down can certainly ensure that you're doing the proper movement. The other thing too is it's adding to the time under tension, right?
Yeah.
So you're actually
100%.
working the muscle more just because it takes longer to do
Right.
the 10 reps or whatever you're doing.
Also, another added benefit to it is when you tend to slow it down, you have to think about it a little bit more. And training with intention, like actively feeling like you are working that muscle and being more mindful about it versus kind of just like rushing through the movement and using momentum can build the neuromuscular connection, which is just as important as building strength. And I use that a lot in the rehab setting. You know, if someone's dealing with some type of pain, slowing down an exercise can be super helpful just to build that connection back as well. So lots of benefits to doing that.
Yeah, I love the physical therapy perspective on this stuff too. You know, like I'm thinking about it from like the coaching side, but there's a lot of perspectives here, which basically means there's a lot of different benefits that you get from doing something like this.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the surface side of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you mean by that?
So when you utilize a different surface level, it's kind of the same idea as you can put your joint through a bigger range of motion. So I'll give you an example. It's helpful to visualize it. Let's think of an exercise like step ups. So when you're doing a step up, you have to put your foot up onto the step. And if you think about what position your knee and your hip are in, compared to something like a squat, which is a great exercise, I'm just comparing the two, your hip specifically is in a much more flexed position when you're doing the step up because you have an elevated surface, which again means you're taking that musculature through a greater range of motion, which can make the exercise harder. So it's, you know, using an elevated surface can definitely bring that benefit. Also using an elevated surface for something like a drop lunge, so you're starting from the step and stepping down, can mimic the way that your muscles are working when you're going down a hill, or like just also kind of getting more into the eccentrics of the exercise. So plenty of different variations that you can come up with when you use an elevated surface versus just doing a simple lunge or a simple squat. And again, in no way am I demonizing like a squat or lunge. I think those are fantastic exercises to do. But when we are working with body weight exercises, we want to build on that. Like that is really the purpose of strength training as much as we can. And that's where the elevated surface can have that benefit.
Yeah, this is really interesting because this is like, you know, I know runners love to just do the same couple exercises over and over again. I fall into this trap myself sometimes.
Me too.
You do what you know, what you like, what you've built a habit around. But it sounds like the basic exercises, like let's just say squat, deadlift, lunge, you know, some of the more running specific body weight exercises.
Yeah.
It almost seems like there are a dozen or even more variations of these exercises that you can incorporate to continue making progress with these exercises.
Yeah.
Because usually when you're strength training, you progress by adding more weight to the exercise. You obviously can't do that with body weight. So we've got to do something else. You can obviously do more reps. I like this idea of using an elevated surface for, you know, part of the exercise or the whole exercise, because it's just challenging the body in a different way, but ultimately it's sort of the same movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think many people will have something that they could use as an elevated surface in their home. So it's really not like everyone will have access to something like that. And it can really provide that variability in your plan. And to kind of go off on that just a little bit more, the variation in exercises, obviously you don't want to change it up every week either. You know, to a certain extent, you do want to be building on the same type of idea. Like I don't need you doing like random different exercises every week, but having variety in your plan is important, because if you think about what running is specifically, it's literally you're doing the same thing every single step, right? And so runners get so much of that, then sometimes what can happen is like all of a sudden you notice like you might be going up a curb or going down a curb, and your body can't handle that because you're used to doing the same thing every single time. So working in having variety in your plan could just make your body a little bit more robust and ready to handle that type of stuff that's going to happen in normal life anyways. But outside of that, in terms of bone health and like muscular health, our bones specifically really respond well to variety. And that's why you see a lot of things like bone stress injuries in the running world, and not so much in like maybe other sports that have like a lot of different, cutting in this way and slowing down and speeding up and like doing all of these different things, is because running is the same thing every time. And our bodies like to have that variety. So you can really add that into your strength routine, because sometimes you just have to do the boring stuff too as a runner.
Yeah, and this idea of becoming more resilient through a more robust strength training program is really interesting to me. I was running the other day, and for some reason I had to like turn around and really look behind me, and I was like, ooh, that kind of didn't make my body feel great, and I was like, I need to do more movements in different planes of motion.
Yes.
Can you talk about that aspect of things? Because as runners, we love that straightforward motion. My track background, I'm good at running as hard as I can, right in front of me. But it's super important to be able to move in a variety of ways. Can
100%.
we do this with our strength training too?
Absolutely. And I think that's truly where the strength training comes in. There's kind of two sides to it though. You also want to be working on stability in like a running specific sense. That we can't get away from that. We can't just be like, oh, I'm only going to train, with different types of movements. However, we are human beings and our bodies are meant to move. And it's really important to make sure that we are moving them, and we shouldn't be scared to move them. And I understand that pain and previous injuries and factors like that can make you scared to move sometimes. But I think that's, where working with a physical therapist comes into play. And I'm really, truly a believer of like, we really shouldn't be limited in any type of movement, and just allowing our bodies to go through different motions on a regular basis can be so healthy. And that's why you'll never see me demonize something like yoga for runners. Like I think yoga is great. I will never have an athlete like stop doing yoga, especially if they really like it, because yoga is something that like gets you in different planes. I just want to make sure that we're saying what it is. Like yoga usually isn't going to, maybe to a certain point it'll get you stronger, but you kind of hit a limit on it. And then, adding weights and things like that can be helpful. But I absolutely think that moving in different ways, and especially if you think it's fun already, that's just an added benefit. So.
Yeah, I'm the same way with yoga in my coaching practice. If someone comes to me and they're like, I just really like doing yoga twice a week, I'm like, great, let's keep doing it. It's not really going to detract from your running, unless you're doing like 90 minutes of Bikram yoga right before your long run, but let's use common sense here.
Exactly.
We've been talking a lot about how to level up our body weight exercises, how to make them more challenging, how to increase the robustness of our strength programming. Is this more important for certain runners than other runners? I will say my bias is I think this is super important for runners who get hurt a lot. We should pay more attention to this kind of work. But like, what's your opinion on that?
I think it's important for both. I do think that, runners who have dealt with injuries previously can benefit from it differently. I think for them, it can be kind of very much a confidence booster and just allowing your body to better tolerate loads. And not only that, but again, that kind of neuromuscular connection I was talking about earlier, moving through emotion. And strength training is really that controlled setting that you need to build that confidence, that every single motion that you're doing, you're aware of it. You know, if something's painful, that's information to relay back to your PT or whoever you're working with. But working in a controlled setting like that for a previously injured runner can be beneficial in that sense. Now, for a runner who has never been injured before, it can still be very much beneficial. I don't like to use the word prevention, because I think that comes with the idea that you will never get injured for whatever reason. But there is something to be said about actively loading your body in different planes that outside of running that can reduce your risk of injury. So I think for both, no matter who you are as a runner, it can absolutely be beneficial. It just might be for different reasons.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, like I admittedly use the term prevention, but I try to use it in like a common sense way that
Correct.
Obviously running is a sport that does have a fairly high injury risk. And there's no amount of strength training that is going to injury proof you. You know, you can imagine if you're running 20 miles a week, if you run 80 miles next week, there is no Victoria Sekely strength program that's going to save you from that poor decision. So it's a good idea to get your running right first, and then layer on this kind of work as the icing on the cake.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important, that's something important to note as well, is there's actually not truly anything you can do to really prevent an injury. You could be doing everything right. Your training's right, your strength training's right, everything else is going well, and then perhaps you slept poorly last night and you have a little bit more going on at your job, and that's what creates. There are just so many factors involved in pain, and I don't even want to rope pain and injury together, because pain does not equal damage, right? Just because you're experiencing pain doesn't mean you've damaged that body part. Pain is so complex and so different person to person for that reason, that we can't possibly sit here and be like, if you do these things in order, you will 100% stay injury free. Like, that's just not the way life is. And the beauty of it is, us experiencing pain as humans is really, A, it's just a signal from our bodies. That's what pain is. And B, if we didn't feel pain, we wouldn't feel anything. And that's not good for us either, you know? So it's like, pain is such an interesting, I mean, I work with people in pain all the time, and I think it's so, everyone is so different. So it's hard to say like strength training is going to be the answer. This is going to be the answer. We know those things can help and they can reduce, but you know, it's going to be different for everyone. So.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad that we're not solving the injury problem today on the Instagram Live, are we?
I wish we could. Like, I really, truly wish I could give that to people, but you know, the simple Instagrams that you see on pain, like and on injuries, they just irk me so much, because I'm like, that's not how it is. And it leads people down a road of feeling like if they just do one simple thing, that'll solve all their problems. And it's not how life works. I wish I wasn't the bearer of bad news, but kind of have to be.
Let me ask you one more question, Victoria, about power. So if you wanted to not necessarily get more from your strength training, if you not necessarily wanted to become a more resilient, robust runner, but you wanted to actually get some power out of your training, it's a little more difficult with bodyweight exercises. But this was a big topic of our program, Bodyweight Power, that I hired you to help me with.
Yes.
And maybe we can actually put a little Easter egg in here right now.
Your
name, Victoria, will save people 20% on this program.
Woo!
So if they're interested, strengthrunning.com/bodyweight, and that code will save you 20% on it. But
love it.
What are some things that we can do to become more powerful if we can't lift heavy weight and do some of those more explosive movements in a gym?
I love that you bring this up, because I don't think that you're limited at all. I think a lot of it comes down to plyometrics, and you can absolutely do plyometrics body weight, and you can be working on, and you know, plyometrics sometimes is a big word. I just literally mean like jumping movements as strength training. Like, you can very easily do squat jumps. You can do, again, using an elevated surface, box jumps. Like, those types of things can also help improve your power. And I would argue that's a lot of what I use in my athletes to improve power before like heavy lifting. So I think a lot of it can be done at home. You're absolutely not limited. You just, again, kind of similar, and this is something big that we've kind of, a big piece that I left out, which just came to my mind, is like moving everything to be single leg can make things a lot harder as well, and a lot more running specific. So doing like single leg type of powerful jumps, or just jumps in general, can help with your power as well, and can be running specific. So there's so many different things you can do. And I'm so happy that we're having this conversation, because I feel like exercise should not be like, it should be open for everyone to do. You don't need to have a gym membership. You don't need to be like, buying all the fancy weights and gadgets and things. Like, we should all be able to do exercises and strength workouts. And if that's what it looks like for you, doing a body weight, then have at it. I'm all for it. And I think that we shouldn't be scared to say that, in the running community either.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think often people think they have to spend, $3,000
Yes.
on the latest garage gym equipment and really outfit themselves with like their own CrossFit box. But we don't have to do all that. And through some of these strategies, we can continue with progressive overload. We can continue improving with our strength training. Because that's like the key here, right? Progressive overload. How do you continue taking the next step with an exercise if it's just body weight? Yeah, you can do it slower. You can introduce a different type of surface. I'm sure part of that too is maybe an unstable surface to make an exercise more challenging. And then, yeah, it's funny that you mentioned single leg exercises. I'm surprised I didn't think of that easier either, because it's such a fundamental thing that runners should be doing regularly, because that's what running is. It's essentially a single leg activity. And if we're not doing a little bit of that when we're also strength training, we're probably missing out a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's ultimately what it all comes down to. Sorry, there's definitely someone at the door.
You got a dog, I see.
Yes, and I've locked him in the room with me, so he's, saying his piece. So I think that's really a huge point of it too, is progressive overload can happen from body weight exercise. That's what the program that we worked on together goes through, and walks you through it really simply with very simple equipment. You don't need to have the whole special gym set up to get a benefit from that. And I think Hopi agrees. He does agree. And I think that that's so important to know. And I think it also makes strength training more accessible, which is ultimately what we want to do for runners.
Yeah. I will fully admit my bias is that I want every runner to be doing some strength training, because I know how important it is. While at the same time, I know for me personally, I'd rather be out there running, but I know strength training allows me to continue running. So I know it's important.
That's why we do it.
Victoria, thanks so much for chatting with me for a few minutes. I know this is like almost like a mini podcast where I get to pick your brain about something. So I appreciate it.
Yes.
Anyone who's listening here who's not following Victoria, give her a follow. She posts not only super helpful content, but hilarious content as well. And lots
of my dogs. So if you want to see this cute face who is a big barker, then yeah, and lots of strength training content, which, by the way, I've loved your strength training posts recently too. They've made me laugh.
Oh, some of those memes.
Yeah, they're so good.
I'm having fun over here.
That's what it's about, right?
Yeah. All right. So
thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Victoria. And we're going to sign off for now, but appreciate everyone. If anyone has any other questions about this topic, you can always send me a DM. I'm available. But until next time, Victoria, this was super fun.
So great to see you, Jason. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye.